It's Christmas time, so I'm coming with a rhyme. I got a gift for you and all my other boos too. It's time for the Insecure series finale. So we're going to read the chart of our good sis Issa from Cali. We'll read her chart and see how she wins, ho. Stay tuned for the reading right after the intro. Hey homies, I hope y'all enjoyed that. Welcome to the Homegirl Astrology YouTube channel where we support Black folks in learning how to use astrology as a self-awareness tool so that they can live their best lives when it comes to career, finances, romance, life purpose, and all of the things. So please comment, like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you can stay tuned for future videos. So as I mentioned at the top of the video, the Insecure series finale is coming on this weekend. I'm super excited about it. I know my friends are. This has been a show that we've loved watching, loved debating about, having think pieces to read about it. Great show where we see ourselves as super relatable, especially for Black women, Black folks in general of a certain age group. And it's just a show that we've loved. So we're so thankful for it, for having had the experience of being able to watch it for the last 5 seasons. Sad to see it coming to an end, but again, thankful nonetheless. So I thought it would be fun to do a tribute to the show by reading Issa Rae's birth chart. Now, Issa Rae has had her birth chart read on YouTube before. There was a video, I think it was by Glamour, where she talked to an astrologer, a psychic, and a tarot reader about her birth chart and about just herself and how she's showing up in the world. Honestly, I don't think the astrologer did a great job on that particular video. So I wanted to go through and look at her chart myself. She gave the birth time in that video, so that's how I know it's accurate here. But my astrology readings that I do through Homegirl Astrology are typically around an hour in time. And I'm not going to do that today. We're not going to be on here for an hour talking about this one chart. If Issa wants to book me, happy to do it. But today, I'm probably going to keep it pretty short. I'm just going to hit some highlights and go in here and there with a little bit more detail. So I'll start with some disclaimers. You can feel free to skip ahead to the timestamps, to the interpretation, to go ahead and get into that. But I did want to just start by saying some important things I need to share. Just because something has happened in your chart, this is true for Issa's chart or for anybody's chart, it doesn't mean that that thing has to keep happening. Astrology is event-based, so once you've had a certain experience with your partner, your work, your family, whatever, it doesn't have to keep occurring. You need to learn from the experience, think about what you're meant to take away from it, and keep going. That said, when I speak about Issa and her life, it might not apply to where she is right now. If I say something about her partner, it might not apply to the person that she's currently married to. It could have been a previous partner. So don't come for me on that. All right. Finally, out of respect for Issa, there are some things that I'm not willing to say about her chart in a public forum. So there are talented astrologers who are out there who will be able to see it in the chart. And that's cool. Again, her birthday is out there. Her birth information is already out there in the public, so they could have found it anyway. But I, do respect people's privacy to some extent, so I don't want to go completely into everything that's out here. So let's get into the chart. Okay, so I'm going to do some chart screen sharing again today, and let's get into it, okay? All right, so we'll start by talking about the rising sign. So the rising sign in astrology is the zodiac sign that was coming up over the horizon at the exact moment of a person's birth. The ascendant degree is the degree of that sign that was rising at the moment of birth. So these two things together and the planets that interact with them in the chart are our bread and butter essentially for understanding a person's personality and how they show up in the world. And also just the wording that's used back in the day traditionally is the soul and psyche of a person. So Issa has Taurus rising. Taurus is a fixed earth sign ruled by the planet Venus. Earth people, generally, we would expect them to be folks who focus on stability, practicality. These are the people who are in touch with their physical senses and the here and now reality of the material world. These are the people who can endure, they persist, they tend to not act out until threatened. There's a tendency toward caution, thinking before acting, and typically they're more conventional, dependable type folk. They don't trust people who move too quickly or speak too quickly because they're able to see through the shenanigans. These are folks who are typically loyal, stable creatures. Sometimes Earth people rely a little bit too much on things as they appear, and they can lack imagination. In Issa's chart, this isn't really a problem. She has a lot of like imaginative things, so we'll get to that. More specifically though, Issa has fixed Earth rising. She's a Taurus rising. Fixed Earth is a bit stubborn. It cannot be forced to move without an intense amount of effort. Think about a mountain. A mountain does not move anywhere without time, effort, energy, or dynamite, right? So it can be nearly impossible to force a fixed Earth person to do things that they don't want to do. They sometimes don't even do things that they want to do because it's just so hard to get going sometimes. Fixed Earth people are folks who can get comfortable in situations even when it's time to move on. That same fixity that lends them the determination they need to stick to a difficult task and to pursue a goal can keep them stuck in the same place, like a job or a relationship or a location that they need to let go of. Thankfully for Issa, she has some other things that kind of mitigate that with a lot of the Capricorn stuff in her chart, because Capricorn wants to move and break ground and keep building. You can't keep building if you stay in a stuck place. Venus is the ruler of Issa's chart. Venus is the author of pleasure, mirth, and jolly. So what is mirth, you ask? It means just having a good time, funny things, amusing things. That's mirth. So she has that planet ruling her chart. So we're already saying, okay, we know Issa's a trip. So that makes sense, right? She represents sweetness, beauty, harmony, love, relationships, art. She represents womanhood and femininity. People who are Venusian in nature, so Venus people, these are folks who tend to be gentle, lovers, neat. They engage in activities that are connected to music, art, jewelry, beauty products. Women in general are things associated with women. And they also tend towards things that really tickle their senses. So they love good food. I already said music, but anything that feels good to them physically as well, that's going to be really important, especially as an Earth Venus person. And they also just related to liking to feel things that feel good. They want to be next to people. They want to be up under you, snuggled up, feeling your skin on their skin, right? But only if your skin's not dry and ashy, because we don't want that. Some of the positive aspects that we see with Venus are people who are cheerful, people who get involved in love. They love to be in love. Some of the more negative aspects are people who can be spendthrifts. So they spend a bunch of money, very wasteful, extravagant, because sometimes Venus can do a little bit too much, you know. These are folks who can be lazy as well, because Venus just, again, sometimes she's just having too much fun that she doesn't want to stop, and she doesn't want to like go to work because she's having a good time, right? Or she gets too comfortable. So that's also connected to that, the fixed Earth placement. We have Venus and that together. So I can imagine that there may be times where Issa likes to laze. She likes to just laze around, chill really hard, you know, and ain't nothing wrong with that. Based on what I just said about Venus being the author of mirth, that is interesting because Issa, of course, is writing these comedy shows. Venus being connected to women, a lot of her shows center around women. So we see Awkward Black Girl has girl in the title. Insecure, the main folks in the cast are women, right? Those are the stories we're following, really, is Issa, Molly, and the other, you know, the guys are there too, but it really centers on their friendship and the friendship with the other ladies as well. Issa also produced a Black lady sketch show, talk about ladies, right? And also the movie Big, right? So that was a movie about two women, you know, changing places. That was a comedy too. Venus is Issa. And Issa is this Venus in Pisces. So Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces. So being exalted is almost like you're worshipped by people who are outside of your circle. So we kind of see that for her just as her being celebrity, right? With her chart ruler in the sign of Pisces, she may even come across looking like a Pisces. She does tend to have a very youthful face and large eyes, which are kind of Piscean traits. In her chart, Issa, as Venus, is located here in the 11th house of her friends and her hopes and dreams. So with the Venus and Mars combination here, generally Venus and Mars in conjunction together represent a strongly sensual person, someone who's sensitive, excitable, and it also represents just sex unions in general. If you think about men are from Mars, women are from Venus, that whole like idea, that kind of makes sense. When you come together, there's some fireworks happening, right? It can also represent an intimate friendship. We can see that Issa's friends are very important to her because, again, she's here in the 11th house of friends. So that she would date a friend or be in a physical relationship with a friend would not be something that would surprise us with her being here in this house with Mars right here. Okay. Venus loves being in Pisces. Mars does not. So in her chart, the 7th house ruler is the planet Mars. So that tells us about her partner as Mars. So as I said, Venus loves Pisces, Mars does not. So her partner is in her world, essentially, and may feel like he doesn't belong. So it's like he's in a foreign country without the resources to make it on his own. She may feel that because she's doing well, that her partner's also doing well by association, but ultimately he really feels left out in the cold. Interestingly, her partner also rules her 12th house of hidden enemies. So there may be a sense that her partner doesn't necessarily have her best interest in mind. With the Venus in a sextile to the ascendant, we see that Issa is someone with a harmonious personality. She's a sociable gal. She's artistically inclined. She's someone who supports her own self by having that supportive sextile with the ascendant. She's someone who uplifts herself, but at the same time, she stresses herself out because she's also ruling her own 6th house of stress and illness. So sometimes she may be stressing herself out to the point of actually getting physically ill, because we know that dis-ease is essentially disease. We also see here the Venus Chiron square. So Chiron represents a wound in our lives. So for her, with Venus representing womanhood, maybe there is a wound around her womanhood or wounded femininity that she's experienced, or discomfort with her womanhood, or with her being Venus and Venus representing her and her body, there could be a discomfort with her body. Sometimes Venus Chiron aspects can mean that the most important relationships that the person experiences might be those that are healing or inspiring in an artistic way, more so than the ones that actually lead to marriage. So there's often a lesson here around learning to stand on our own values rather than always accommodating other people. This can also be a sign of being a hopeless romantic, having Venus Chiron together. It also shows the beauty in things that people normally find ugly or wounded. I think she does a great job of this with highlighting communities in LA that are traditionally marginalized, downtrodden, kind of viewed in a very negative light, but she highlights, the great businesses that are there, the food, the culture, all of that. So you can definitely see that coming through with her. Also, looking at Venus and Pluto, we have Venus over here and Pluto over here in what's known as a trine, which is an easier aspect. We see someone with a desire for sensual pleasure, somebody who may be a bit obsessive in love. She has also an extraordinary power of attraction. So there's something about her that people just gravitate towards for some reason. There's also a sense of being attracted to her lover by an inner compulsion. And she could also be a powerful person with potential for great wealth. So if you have this in your chart, that could be a good thing for you. We already know Issa has great wealth, but it's here. With Venus and Uranus in a square here. Here's Uranus over here in the 8th house, Venus in the 11th. With Venus and Uranus together, we're seeing that Issa is a weird person. She's into weird stuff and she wants to live life on her own terms, right? She's an artist. She's kind of extravagant. She's someone who's likely moody and sensitive a bit as well. And she's someone who wants to be booed up with this moon in Libra, at the same time wanting to be a dutiful partner with this Saturn in the 7th house. But she has this Uranus and Venus, which is more of a desire for independence and love, an urge for having that separateness. So I can imagine how that could create tension in Issa's relationships by wanting to be with somebody, but also needing that time alone. So hopefully she's able to find a partner who understands that about her. So our next video from Homegirl Astrology, just as a sneak peek, is going to be about Uranus and Venus. And then the next one after that will be about Pluto and Venus combination. So stay tuned. I'm not going to go too much into it just because we are going to have those videos coming out. But whatever I say in those videos could apply to Issa as well, since she has them both in her chart. We also have Mercury and Neptune here together, making a sextile here with the Venus. So Mercury and Neptune can represent a powerful imagination, somebody who's an intuitive thinker, a visionary person, idealistic, someone with an imaginative writing ability. Mercury and Neptune together can also represent a deceitful person. So it's interesting that this same combination is also excellent for actors, Mercury, Neptune, because essentially actors are always deceiving people whenever they're on stage or whenever they're in front of the camera. So this is a great placement for her in the field that she's in. Venus Neptune is, as I mentioned in a previous video, it is expecting too much from love. It's also connected to erotic imagination. So girl, when you coming out with those nasty novels, we want to read them. What's your pen name? She's also a dreamy person. She's somebody we would see as connected to music as well, just from the Venus, but also adding in the Neptune and Venus together, that becomes even more musical. And for her, she has the Mercury and Neptune here on the cardinal axis at 1 degree Capricorn. So that means that these gifts that I'm talking about between the Mercury and Neptune aspect, they're being brought out into the world and being shared in a very public way. We also have Venus, Jupiter in a 45 degree octile aspect. So that's a hard aspect, which means it's kind of a difficult thing that she may be experiencing. With this, it can mean somebody who's inclined to laziness or wastefulness, which we already kind of established earlier on. And funny enough, in one of the reference books that I check into, it says film star mannerisms next to this placement. So it's funny that she is a film star, right? So also with the Jupiter in her chart representing other people's money and also being tied into her 11th house because it rules the sign of Sagittarius. Jupiter also rules the sign of Pisces. So there may be a connection between having a partner who spends her money. So again, I'll restate this, even though I said in the beginning, this may not apply to her current partner. It could have applied to other people in her life before who spent up her coin, right? This Jupiter is not doing the best in the chart. So we would have some concerns about their money not being great necessarily. So the part of fortune Jupiter combination is the most elevated thing in her chart. So we would expect that her big money is on display. Like her joy, her fortune is something that is very prominent in her life. And of course, we all know that Issa is rich. You know, we know what she's doing and all of the productions that she's involved in, and that, you know, brings her money. All right, so I talked a lot about the ascendant aspects to the ruler. So now I'll just talk about the North Node and the Chiron here in the first house, because when you want to talk about somebody's personality and their environment that they're experiencing, we need to look at the house of personality and the physical body as well. So with the North Node in her first house, we could see that Issa, from a karmic standpoint, she's really here to focus on herself and her body and being who she is. And we can see that in the work that she does, that so much of her work is centered around Black womanhood. So many of her characters, well, at least Issa from Insecure and Issa from Awkward Black Girl, are centered around her own life experiences, and we're seeing that put on display. With the Chiron here in the first house, there can be a wound around the self, a wound around the body, a sense of sickness when it comes to that, and discomfort. So there could be issues with self-image when you have Chiron in the first house. There could be insecurity around her personality, her physical body. And I've seen it also show up in the charts of people who are physically ill themselves. They have an actual sickness, or the caretakers of that person who is ill. So like that becomes a part of their own identity when they are the caretaker. All right. So that was a lot, just covering the ascendant and those related planets. And I know some of y'all are like, oh my God, Issa's a Capricorn. You didn't even talk about that. And that's because when we talk about the soul and psyche of a person, we don't necessarily dig into that from the sun sign. Yes, she is a Capricorn. Yes, she does have a stellium in Capricorn. So a stellium is essentially a group of planets, 3 or 4 planets within a sign. So we do see more Capricorn themes in her life just because she has so many planets there. She's going to want to be the type of person to build something from the ground up. She is going to have a slow and steady climb through her career, like a goat ascending a mountain in that stereotypical Capricorn fashion. And we also see that she's not going to be somebody who necessarily achieves overnight success. And we've seen that from her career. She was on the internet on YouTube for a minute, with Awkward Black Girl before it really popped. So that is definitely part of the Capricorn experience, toiling away in the midnight hours, doing things the old fashioned way. You get it, while other people may seemingly come up overnight. So that stuff is still there. But for me, the other things that I've said would be more primary in talking about her personality. So we'll see what happens to Issa D on Insecure when the show wraps on Sunday. But the real Issa D, the one that we call Issa Rae, she needs to focus on herself. That's essentially what her life will be about. It's cool to have friends and a boo, but ultimately she's meant to be uniquely herself and keep embracing that awkwardness. I haven't even touched on finances or family or career, but this feels like a good stopping point. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and a share. Drop a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Let me know what you thought. Also subscribe, turn on notifications so you can stay tuned for future videos. Finally, if you're interested in having your chart read by me, please book a reading at homegirlastrology.com. I'll leave a link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Peace, happy holidays, have a happy 2022.